Hi everyone, my name is Apuraj Garakapati. Welcome to my YouTube channel Amazing Apad.
Don't just watch the story, live it.
Later, in the silence of the forest night, Logan stood alone, holding his sword in an unfamiliar stance. Suddenly, energy exploded outward as he lunged forward. A radiant beam of light burst from the blade, slicing through the darkness. The beam detonated violently, and when the light faded, it was clear that the massive rock ahead had been shattered completely. Logan examined the result and noticed the beam had pierced the rock and continued through the trees behind it. He realized that what he had just used was the second form of the divine sword secrets, and it wasn't enough. He needed to grow stronger. 2 months later, the construction of the village was finally complete. Families began moving in, and with the arrival of early summer, the new settlement felt alive and vibrant. Inside the office, Logan and Dwayne discussed the city's progress. Dwayne reported that the recovery of the area was going well, though there was still a noticeable labor shortage. Logan reassured him calmly, explaining that refugees were arriving constantly and instructing Dwayne to accept every newcomer without exception. Dwayne then asked about Hammer and was told that he was still on vacation. Logan briefly wondered if he might have given him too much time off. Dwayne then brought up a rumor that Hammer had received a large quantity of mithril before leaving. Logan confirmed it and explained that he had given the mithril to Hammer so he could forge new weapons for the knights. Dwayne raised an eyebrow, commenting that it didn't sound much like a vacation. Logan replied that working with rare metals was a dwarf's dream, and that Hammer was probably enjoying himself more than ever. Far away, Viscount Max Peredo was seething with rage, slamming his fist against a table. The McLeans had reclaimed the wasteland, and he scoffed, declaring that such land could never be cultivated. One of his vassals explained that rumors were spreading about the source of McLean's well. Some claimed Logan had made a fortune through business, while others insisted he had discovered a gold mine. The Viscount ignored the gossip and asked about the harvest from the reclaimed land. The vassal estimated that production would be at least double their own. Hearing this only fueled the Viscount's fury. He realized they couldn't afford to stand by and asked if there was any excuse they could use to invade. The vassal suggested exploiting the people who had fled to McLean's, using them as a pretext to infiltrate the territory and claim the reclaimed land as compensation. The Viscount immediately identified the flaw in the plan. Acting alone would be too risky. He devised a solution. He would contact the Viscounty of Sylvan, reasoning that their people must have fled as well. Together, they would be strong enough to overpower the McLeans. Back in Logan's office, the atmosphere was heavy. Patrick, Logan, Dwayne, and Hinckley were discussing training and military expansion. Logan informed them that he had selected around 300 talented recruits. Patrick questioned whether Logan truly believed they were worthy of becoming knights. Logan nodded. Dwayne commented that the number seemed excessive. Captain Hinckley called it absurd, arguing that even with 10 years of intense training, only 1 in 100 people awakened their strength. Logan remained unfazed and stated that the training system would remain unchanged. Dwayne shouted that Logan was throwing money away, but Logan replied that neighboring territories would provoke them sooner or later anyway. Patrick asked him to explain. Logan clarified that with McLean City flourishing and fertile land reclaimed, there was no way the vice-counties of Sylvan and Peredo would remain quiet. Hinckley interrupted, insisting they had no legitimate excuse to attack. Dwayne shouted over him, cutting him off, and argued that the real issue was the influx of refugees. Logan asked his father to consider how many refugees had arrived and how many of them might have come from Peredo or Sylvan. Furious, Dwayne demanded to know why Logan hadn't prevented this situation in the first place. Patrick slowly pieced everything together and asked Logan directly if his goal had been to start a war. Logan's answer was blunt. They were enemies, and they would have to deal with them eventually. So why wait? Silence filled the room. Everyone from Hinckley to Dwayne was visibly disappointed. Patrick wondered if he had given up his authority too soon. Just then, Rick burst into the room looking for Logan and announced that Sylvan and Peredo had sent a voice message. Logan calmly replied that things had already begun and that they needed to decide how to handle the situation. Outside the castle, 2 flags fluttered in the breeze. They belonged to the emissaries of Sylvan and Peredo. The silent emissaries admired the beauty of the city as they walked through it. They observed how the houses were arranged around a large crossroads and noted how clean and content the people appeared. They concluded that the city was worth taking. One of them attempted to start a conversation with a soldier who proudly said that all the credit belonged to the first young master, Logan. The soldier praised Logan's abilities, claiming he was far more advanced than any other prince his age, and that he prioritized the well-being of both the land and its people. He even began sharing an anecdote about Logan, but the envoys cut him off, uninterested. Inside the meeting hall, the envoys stood before Logan and Patrick. They demanded the return of the refugees and control over the Tesseran Plains. Logan and Patrick both lowered their heads. Logan thought they were openly asking for war, and Patrick silently agreed. Hinckley stepped forward and took charge, asking whether Sylvan and Perida truly intended to go to war. The hall erupted into chaos as everyone began shouting at once. One of the emissaries, clearly frightened, pointed at Logan and Patrick and accused them of trying to intimidate envoys. Patrick was furious, but maintained his composure. He warned them that they were the ones declaring war and that the McClellands did not fear it. The envoy retorted that, if war broke out, nothing but ashes would remain of the McLeans. A knot formed in Logan's stomach, and he stepped forward, demanding to know how refugees could be used as bargaining chips. He told his father that the envoys had forgotten their duties as nobles, and that there was no longer any need for negotiation. The knights surrounded the emissaries, swords drawn and pointed at them. The envoys shouted, asking if Logan and Patrick were really trying to start a war. Logan descended the steps and replied coldly that it would be all-out war. He said they had the audacity to enter his castle and insult him with foul words. Logan drew his sword. Logan killed the guards in seconds and advanced toward the envoys. One of them, trembling with fear, begged Logan not to come any closer. Logan ignored him, swung his sword, and killed him instantly. The remaining envoy collapsed to his knees, pledging loyalty to McLean and promising to relay every detail to his lord. Logan turned to his father, who gave a silent nod. Logan then ordered the knights to prepare for war. The whole erupted in cheers. On the same day, the McLeans sent out a magical transmission to the Viscounts, openly demanding compensation for the envoy's insolence. Viscount Soto Sylvan was livid. He scoffed at the demand, mocking it outright, and declaring that the McLeans didn't have the strength to fight him. Logan and Patrick watched the glowing transmission globe, as Sylvan's response was summarized clearly: return the servants, pay 10 million gold, and hand over the Tesseran Plains. Patrick questioned why there was even a rush when the McLeans had enough power to crush 6 counties if they wanted to. Logan shut that down immediately, warning that Sylvan needed to be occupied as fast as possible. Kaisalan entered the room with his report, stating that preparations were complete. 389 regular soldiers, 100 from the main fortress, and 313 mercenaries were all ready. Logan praised Kaisalan's work and asked about their equipment. Kaisalan confirmed that armor, spears, and crossbows had already been distributed, and that their forces would not be outmatched. Logan thought to himself that even if Sylvan and Perida attacked together, they wouldn't lose. But this fight couldn't drag on. Drawing too much attention would attract the factions fighting over the throne, and Logan wanted the third prince to become king, since he was the only reasonable option. Logan then asked Kaisalan if there was any good news. Kaisalan nodded and said there was. Victor had awakened his strength and was waiting to report it personally. Logan immediately perked up and told him to bring Victor in. When Victor entered, Logan didn't let him speak and told him to show it instead. Victor focused and gray smoke slowly wrapped around his body. Then his power exploded outward. Logan and Patrick were left speechless. Logan praised Victor sincerely and promoted him to knight on the spot, tearing up the slave document. Victor was clearly happy, though slightly annoyed when Logan added that the promotion itself would be finalized after the war. Logan burned the slave contract, knowing Victor only wanted to fight anyway. In his mind, Logan already had an opponent prepared for him. Logan told his father that they should respond to Sylvan. Patrick told him to skip all formalities and go straight for the throat. Logan smiled, then ordered the army to march toward. Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Up High grow naturally. Sylvan County. He shouted for Soto Sylvan to come out and face him. Inside Sylvan territory, Soto Sylvan raged. Captain Kellyan asked for permission to lead the charge with 120 knights and 2,512 soldiers. Sylvan felt relieved. Even though the McLean army was larger than expected, Sylvan still believed he held the advantage, especially with Kellyan being a higher-ranking knight. At the same time, Sylvan worried that Perida might betray him. He convinced himself that McLean and Perida were working together against him. Furious, he ordered Kellyan to contact the barony of Beffros to keep Perida in check. Kellyan acknowledged the order. In front of the castle, Captain Hinckley, Logan and Patrick discussed their approach. Hinckley suggested providing covering fire, but Patrick rejected it outright, saying they couldn't risk Sylvan escaping. Logan agreed and explained that Sylvan believed his forces were superior and would come out to fight soon. Hinckley found it strange, noting that Logan seemed to understand Soto Sylvan far too well. The gates of Sylvan by County opened, and Sylvan's knights marched out. Patrick assessed their formation and remarked that Sylvan had around 3,000 regular soldiers. Hinckley noted that it was about 1.5 times more than the McLean forces. Kellyan tried to speak, but Patrick ordered the advance. Without hesitation, Kellyan shouted insults, calling the McLean soldiers rabble. Kaiselin calmly ordered the mercenaries to ready their crossbows. Kellyan couldn't understand Patrick's plan and ordered his men to raise their shields. Kaiselin gave the firing order. A rain of arrows fell from the sky. Kellyan smirked at first, confident they'd be blocked, until the bolts punched straight through the shields. His expression twisted with fury as he screamed for a full advance. Kaiselin immediately ordered the troops to spread out, confusing Kellyan completely. The crossbow cavalry split apart and began targeting the Sylvan soldiers directly. Kellyan felt genuine fear. For the first time, retreat crossed his mind, but it was already too late. Patrick stepped forward and challenged the Sylvan knights head-on. Kellyan froze as Patrick cut down 4 knights in a single exchange. In that moment, Kellyan understood Patrick had reached the advanced level. Patrick then gave the order to annihilate the enemy. The McLean knights surged forward and tore through the Sylvan forces without mercy. Hinckley watched it all unfold, realizing that just 2 months ago, the Sylvan knights would have been an even match. Now they were being crushed. Hinckley smiled proudly and commented that their lord's brutal training had truly paid off. On the battlefield, Hinckley was locked in a brutal duel against 2 knights at the same time. They clearly hadn't expected his strength, and within moments, both of them were disarmed. The knights finally understood what they were dealing with. Hinckley was a high-ranking knight, someone who had mastered the iron blood sword. Nearby, Logan charged straight toward Kellyan, who instantly realized he was in serious trouble. Their swords clashed. Kellyan retreated with every exchange, irritation building, as he called Logan a blockhead. When Kellyan suddenly attacked with full force, Logan dodged at the last moment, the blade slicing only his ear. Logan actually applauded the move, admitting he hadn't expected all of Kellyan's swords to be real. Kellyan summoned another blade, but Logan didn't even flinch. Kellyan began to notice something terrifying. The closer he got, the more his swords failed him. Logan pushed him further, mocking him, calling him weak. That insult worked. Kellyan snapped and prepared to strike again. Logan closed his eyes and something inside him shifted. His core evolved, becoming a 2-star core. He'd avoided Kellyan's attack effortlessly and reappeared behind him. From that moment, the fight completely tilted in Logan's favor. He landed a devastating blow, badly wounding Kellyan. The realization hit hard. Logan had become a high-ranking knight. Logan raised his sword and gathered his aura, preparing to end it. He bent his knees, poured raw power into his body, and leaped high into the air, choosing to finish the battle in the most overwhelming way possible. His aura surged as he unleashed his secret technique. The divine ripple, a massive wave of aura, crashed forward. Kellyan tried to block, but it was pointless. The attack crushed him. The Sylvan troops immediately understood the battle was over. Logan landed, standing tall, and shouted that the enemy leader had fallen. Moments later, Patrick announced the capture of Soto Sylvan and ordered all remaining forces to surrender. Logan smiled to himself as the outcome settled. After the war, Sylvan County had lost 42 knights and 1,223 soldiers. The McLeans, in contrast, had lost only 5 knights and not a single soldier elsewhere. A man was informed by his vassal that Sylvan had fallen to the McLeans, and he concluded that it was finally time to act. Back in Sylvan County, Soto Silva knelt before Patrick, who gave him one final chance. He could apologize, take only the bare minimum of his belongings, and leave the land with his family. Soto Silva looked up and declared that the takeover would never be tolerated by the royal family. From behind him, Logan immediately knew that was the worst thing he could have said. The fall of the McLeans in the past had been blamed on poor management, but the one who had truly caused rebellion to profit from the chaos was Bifrost. Logan remembered that royal intervention had once prevented Bifrost from forcing them into servitude. But even hearing that name darken Patrick's expression, Patrick asked Sylvan calmly if he wanted to die. Soto tried to speak, but Logan stepped forward and cut his throat without hesitation, leaving him to bleed out. Logan told Patrick that this was respect, an honorable death instead of humiliation. Patrick nodded and said Logan had done well. Logan, however, knew the truth. He could only hope that other nobles wouldn't use this incident as a reason to strike, especially Bifrost, an enemy they still couldn't afford to face. A few weeks passed, and inside Sylvan Castle, Logan and his father Patrick were talking quietly. Logan mentioned that even though they had stayed on high alert, Peretta still hadn't shown any signs of attacking. Patrick asked calmly if there was any real reason for her to make a move. Instead of answering directly, Logan raised another possibility. What if Peretta attacked Tesserin Castle instead? Patrick brushed it off, telling him to relax since Clayton was stationed there. Logan agreed that brute force alone wasn't what had allowed them to defeat Viscount Sylvan. The truth was that Sylvan had underestimated them, while the MacClins had gone all in, using every resource they had. On top of that, they had their hidden trump card, Clayton himself, along with his stone golem stationed inside Tesserin Castle. Even with all of that, Logan knew the current situation wasn't sustainable. Managing 3 castles simultaneously like this would eventually break them. They needed a better system. Logan proposed moving the administrative center of their territory to the cities instead of the castles, which would make managing all 3 locations far more efficient. 2 nearby vassals supported the idea, pointing out that the monster-infested forests had already been cleared, and leaving minimal forces behind in the mountains wouldn't be an issue. The knights could remain stationed in the cities, ready to march toward either Tesserin or Sylvan at a moment's notice. Patrick considered it carefully and agreed that it was a solid plan. Logan felt relieved, joking that now he wouldn't have to carry everything alone anymore. Patrick congratulated him and asked how many knights they had captured after the war. Logan replied that there were 75 prisoners, all held in cells, with 8 of them being intermediate knights. He then asked if Patrick would allow him to try persuading them to serve the McLeans. Logan reflected that a single battle had yielded more knights than years of carefully selecting young talents. But he also knew this success came from Sylvan's arrogance. If Sylvan had been more cautious, they would have suffered heavier losses and captured only the fraction of those knights. It wasn't something they could rely on happening again, and he reminded himself not to grow attached to this victory. Patrick, however, was visibly pleased. He said that with forces like these, even Peretta no longer seemed threatening. He praised Logan openly, saying that everything May had achieved was thanks to his son, his face glowing with pride. Logan felt his face heat up and fell silent, embarrassed by the praise. Patrick chuckled and told him to enjoy the moment. At least for that day, their brief happiness didn't last. A vassal suddenly arrived with urgent news from Bifrost, leaving both Logan and Patrick stunned. The vassal began reading the letter aloud. Bifrost referred to himself as the Lord of the Southwest and expressed his dissatisfaction with the McLean family's constant annual wars. Patrick nearly exploded just hearing Bifrost's claim. Before we move ahead, please take a second to share on this video. Sharing helps this video reach friends who may also enjoy anime, gaming, travel, cricket, chess, career basics, or personal stories. Your support helps Amazing Abhi grow naturally. Such a title. The vassal continued. According to the letter, at Viscount Sylvan's request, both Peretta and the McLeans were to immediately cease hostilities. With every word, Patrick grew angrier, shouting that they were the ones who had been attacked, and now they were asking for intervention. Logan restrained himself and insisted they hear the letter to the end. Bifrost went on to admit that conflict in the region had persisted because he himself had failed in his duties as a lord and had not promoted coexistence. Therefore, On his 50th birthday next month, Roger Bafros would host a gathering, inviting the heirs of every southwestern family to discuss the future of the region. Patrick completely lost his temper. He called it nonsense and unleashed his aura, tearing the clothes off the vassal. Still reading, he roared that the McLeans would not attend and that they did not serve Bafros. The letter concluded by stating that refusing the invitation would be taken as a rejection of dialogue. Patrick declared they would not bow to threats. Logan disagreed. He thought the invitation sounded interesting. Patrick stared at him with an expression Logan had never seen before. Even while saying he respected his son's opinion, Patrick started yelling again, ripping the last scraps of fabric from the vassal. He swore that the McLeans would never kneel before Bafros, even if it meant his death. At that moment, Logan calmly picked up a plant and asked his father if he wanted a burial right now, prompting one of the accompanying knights to step in and firmly state that there would be no patricide today. Patrick finally calmed down, took a deep breath, and asked Logan what he was really thinking. Logan answered honestly, there was no way they could defeat Bafros right now. He laid out the facts. They had around 200 elite knights, over 500 high-ranking ones, and just over 300 standard knights. That force was only a fraction of Bafros' military power. While things looked good on the surface, the McLeans were walking on eggshells. They needed time to integrate the Sylvan Knights, time to force Perida into submission, time for Logan to master the third style of the Divine Sword secrets, and time for their forces to continue training. Patrick understood his reasoning, but warned that the Southwest was different. Unlike other regions, Bafros couldn't openly demand loyalty from neighboring lords. Logan corrected him, revealing that during his time in the capital, he had learned that Purcellan and Rothman had already sworn loyalty to Bafros long ago. Patrick was left stunned by the revelation. Logan smiled quietly, satisfied that he had secured permission to attend. He reassured his father not to worry, saying he understood his own limits, and that the trip would simply be a chance to see how their ancestral lands had changed. The next morning, back in McLean City, Logan was suddenly confronted by Hammer. Without any warning, Hammer asked if the rumor was true. If Logan was really being sold off to their enemies. Logan stared at him blankly, having no idea what nonsense he was talking about. The moment he understood what was going on, irritation flared hard. Logan didn't even argue. He punched Hammer straight in the face and told him to stop believing stupid rumors. Hammer shot back that most rumors about Logan usually turned out to be true, so it wasn't exactly his fault. Without another word, Hammer pulled something from behind his back, unwrapped it, and shoved it toward Logan, telling him to take it. Logan froze. In his hands was a sword forged entirely from pure mithril. For once, Logan had absolutely nothing to say. Later, on the Bafros estate, Plone Perida, the heir of the Perida family, arrived by carriage and immediately noticed something strange. A lone man in a cloak was walking calmly through the estate grounds. When Plone realized it was Logan McLean, shock hit him hard. Logan had occupied the Sylvan barony, and yet here he was traveling alone. Plone assumed the McLeans must have suffered massive losses if Logan didn't even have guards with him. Annoyed, Plone stepped out of the carriage and demanded to know why he was being treated the same as some nobody. A guard tried to intervene, but Plone ignored him, introducing himself to Logan instead. He casually mentioned that he had heard stories about Logan, especially the part where he killed 6 knights in the blink of an eye. Plone noticed that Logan's sword was spotless. When they shook hands, Plone commented that Logan looked far younger than expected and that the rumors must be exaggerated. Logan smirked and tightened his grip. He squeezed Plone's hands so hard it nearly shattered. In that instant, Plone understood just how wrong he had been. His hand trembled when they finally let go. Logan apologized calmly, saying he had misunderstood and thought it was some kind of strength contest. Holding back tears, Plone snapped, called him an idiot, and drew his sword, ready to teach Logan a lesson. A guard tried to warn him that personal duels were forbidden, but Logan tossed his cloak aside and told Plone he talks too much. Furious, Plone ordered his knights to attack. Logan centered himself, surging, and in the blink of an eye passed straight through the guards. When they realized what happened, Logan was already behind them, his sword resting lightly against Plone's neck. Plone felt no aura pressure at all, and realized the attack had come purely from the sword's raw power. One of the guards nervously asked where Logan had bought such a weapon. Logan replied curtly that it was rude to ask. Plone convinced himself that Logan was just lucky, someone who stumbled upon a good sword by chance. That illusion shattered when a man in full armor stepped through the gate. It was Sir Franz, the Moonlight Knight, a knight so powerful that Beffrose would only send him for a serious reason. Sir Franz studied Logan carefully, asked if he was Logan McLean, and openly expressed his surprise at seeing such a young intermediate knight. Plone and his knights were left speechless. Plone finally understood that Logan's strength wasn't just skill or luck. From the high-ranking level onward, power carried a unique presence that couldn't be hidden. Logan deliberately restrained himself, revealing only what was necessary to avoid drawing more attention. He placed a hand over his chest respectfully and said he hoped to one day reach Sir Franz's level. Sir Franz advised him not to settle and to aim beyond that, to become a true superhuman. Sir Franz then escorted them inside, explaining that the heirs of Pursulin and Ruffman had already arrived, and that everyone would wait until the banquet the following night. Plone tried mocking Logan again, pointing out that he had no party clothes and offering to lend him pajamas. Logan ignored him completely and asked a servant for his room. Internally, Logan thought Plone had no idea what position he was really in. Occupying the Perida estate wouldn't be difficult at all. Looking up at the building, Logan remembered Plone's words. He decided he wouldn't remove his armor anyway. This was land his ancestors had lost, and letting his guard down wasn't an option. Later, Logan stood before Lord Beffrose. Logan bowed respectfully, greeted him, and wished him a happy birthday. Many around them sneered, whispering that Logan was a country bumpkin with no manners. Beffrose welcomed Logan openly and said that since he had traveled so far, he assumed the McLeans would comply with his wishes. Logan replied calmly that if Beffrose desired peace, the McLeans would always be ready to march beside him. Beffrose praised his answer, calling him enlightened, and invited him to enjoy the celebration. Logan admitted inwardly that Beffrose was impressive. A fifth circle mage like him was as dangerous as an advanced knight on the battlefield. An announcement interrupted his thoughts. Beffrose was about to give a speech. He thanked everyone for attending his birthday, and also expressed gratitude to the second prince for granting him the son's tear. The room buzzed with shock at how close Beffrose was to the prince. Beffrose declared it was time for the Southwest to abandon outdated traditions and unite under the second prince's will. Logan recognized it immediately. This was a polished demand for submission. Beffrose ended by praising Logan as a brilliant young man, the hero who led the McLeans through 2 wars and became an intermediate knight at just 21. He'd extended his hand and said he didn't wish to force Logan, only to make an offer. Count Valtramon, the second prince's grandfather, was searching for talented youths like Logan to take his disciples. Logan was stunned, but replied honestly that he already had a master. Beffrose asked if it was his father. Logan said no, explaining he had been trained by a great man and regretted having to refuse. Beffrose laughed lightly, remarking that youth moves quickly, and said that the Flaming Heartsword himself would soon arrive to offer guidance. He would extend the same offer to every heir present, and Logan could even invite his own teacher. At that point, Logan stopped caring about the lesson itself and focused on the real issue. Beffrose was trying everything to bind the McLeans. Refusing again would be difficult, but Logan had already prepared for this. He thanked Beffrose and said he couldn't refuse such insistence. Beffrose smiled, saying this would be the first step toward uniting the Southwest. He revealed that Pursulin and Ruffman had already agreed and that he would personally gift them. Servants brought in a table holding 2 artifacts, a sword and a hammer. Logan immediately recognized their value, at least 12 million gold. Beffrose called Ramon Pursulin and Eric Ruffman forward. When asked to swear loyalty, both knelt. Beffrose bestowed the sword of Lambton to Ramon, and the hammer of Jackson to Eric, promising rich rewards to those who served him. Drunk, Plone Paretta staggered forward and loudly commented, "Before we move ahead, please take a second to like on this video. A like tells me that you enjoyed this topic. Your support helps Amazing Up High grow naturally." That Logan's sword looked better. He repeated it, openly insulting Beffrose. Logan realized Plone had just dug his own grave. Logan's sword rivaled most artifacts in power. Logan had planned to use it as leverage if things went badly, but Plone had destroyed that option. Befrose asked if Logan's sword was truly that special. Logan replied calmly that he was fortunate enough to receive a weapon forged by dwarves. Befrose asked to inspect it, but Logan knew that once handed over, he would never get it back. He said that even if he was young, it was hard to part with his partner. Befrose smiled and suggested an alternative. Instead of handing over the sword, Logan could demonstrate its worth in an exhibition match against Ramon. Logan smiled, acknowledging how unexpected things had become, but saw no reason to refuse. He drew Lux and calmly stated that he would comply. Inside the training room, Logan stood facing Ramon. Ramon insisted on attacking first, but Logan calmly refused, making it clear he didn't want anyone later claiming he had won with an unfair advantage. Ramon took that as arrogance and began circulating his aura. Around them, the women whispered in admiration, commenting on the elegance and beauty of Ramon's sword. Compared to Ramon's flashy weapon, Logan's sword crafted by hammer looked almost plain, but its balance, sharpness, and durability were flawless. Ramon mocked him, questioning whether such a delicate-looking blade could survive against an artifact. Logan inwardly judged Ramon as even more foolish than Perida. When Ramon finally lunged forward, Logan briefly scanned the audience and spotted Sir Fram. That was when he decided his approach. He couldn't show his real strength. He needed to make it messy. A stumble here, a shallow scratch there, a few exchanges that looked close, followed by a solid counter. Enough effort to look impressive, but not threatening, then ended cleanly with confidence. Before anyone could react, Logan had already pinned the blade to Ramon's neck. Ramon panicked, shouting excuses, claiming he wasn't accustomed to the sword. Befrose openly expressed his disappointment in Ramon's performance. Logan felt disappointed as well. Befrose then apologized to Logan and offered compensation, promising to open his treasury and allow him to choose any artifact he wished. Logan immediately understood the motive. Befrose was trying to bind him, confident that whatever Logan selected could later be reclaimed. Before the situation could settle, a servant rushed in with urgent news. The Sword Duke had made contact to deliver birthday wishes. Befrose froze. Felix Esperanza praised Befrose as one of the kingdom's pillars and apologized for not attending in person. Befrose responded politely, but then Felix noticed Logan standing among the crowd and asked if it was really him. The room fell silent. Befrose began to sweat. Logan stepped forward, realizing his gamble had paid off, and respectfully addressed Felix as his master. Shock rippled through the hall. Logan knew then that asking for Felix's backing had been the correct move. As a neutral superhuman, Felix's wishes couldn't be rejected. Felix gave Logan a knowing wink and mentioned he expected to see him again in the capital. Logan bowed in gratitude. Befrose looked like he was on the verge of collapse. The following day, Logan entered Befrose's artifact vault. A guard informed him he had exactly 1 hour and could choose only the single item. Around 30 artifacts were displayed. Logan ignored the weapons entirely. Instead, he felt his force being subtly drawn toward a pair of armored boots sealed inside a glass case. There was no visible magic, yet they continued siphoning his energy. Curious, Logan began feeding them more of his strength. The pull intensified, draining him like a tide, refusing to back down. Logan poured in even more power, challenging them outright. Suddenly, the boots released a violent surge of energy that threw him backward. His strength rushed back into him all at once. That was, asked whether Logan McLean had already left, with 3 days still remaining before the party. He immediately understood what that meant. The young man had no intention of staying. Furious, Befrose concluded that Logan had deliberately played him and ordered his knights to pursue him and retrieve the artifact at any cost. Logan was resting beside a campfire when a sudden wave of murderous intent surged toward him. He sprang to his feet at once and scanned the trees. In the darkness, he sensed movement, a pursuer. Moments later, a hooded man stepped out from the bushes, and Logan instantly realized that Befrose had sent 4 people. The man at the front casually warned his companions that they were free to do whatever they wanted, as long as they didn't kill Logan. The other 3 lunged at him, but Logan didn't wait to be surrounded. He moved first. The attackers panicked, unable to comprehend how an intermediate knight could move with such speed. Logan felt a flicker of satisfaction. Choosing those boots had been the right call. Not only did they allow triple jumps in mid-air, they adjusted to his size automatically and even repaired themselves. Judging by their performance, they were at least a 4th grade artifact, if not higher. A fitting name came to mind almost naturally. Boots of the Wind God. As the fight escalated, one of the men asked for permission to strike Logan's vital points. The hooded figure responded, with open disgust, calling such behavior shameful. In the next instant, that man moved. He attacked from behind, his aura shimmering silver. Logan barely managed to block and was still forced backward by the sheer power. His expression hardened. This was no ordinary opponent. He gathered his aura, bracing himself for a brutal fight, and remarked that he never imagined the title of Moonlight Knight was earned through ambushes and sneak attacks. That was when it clicked. The stance, the aura, the presence. Logan recognized him. Sir Franz, the Moonlight Knight himself. Franz openly acknowledged that Logan had not only concealed his real strength, but exceeded expectations. He added that he was already aware of the artifact Logan had taken, and declared that he would claim it as payment for the lesson he was about to teach. Logan scoffed, asking what kind of lesson that was, and pointed out that Sir Franz should be ashamed of the title he carried. Franz replied that this was precisely why. The lesson would be harsh. As Logan studied his posture more closely, he realized Franz's stance resembled someone wielding a whip rather than a sword. Then Franz attacked. A blade of force lashed out, moving like a whip through the air. Logan blocked again and again, remarking internally on how relentless the assault was. He knew he couldn't last long like this. Deciding there was no room for hesitation, Logan pushed everything he had into his aura and maneuvered behind Franz, striking with full intent. The result shocked him, not even a scratch. In that instant, Logan understood. He flipped backward just in time, narrowly avoiding another deadly blow. Franz questioned how Logan was dodging his attacks, and wondered aloud if those movements were secret techniques from the Sword Duke. Logan didn't bother answering. If Franz was still standing, then the attack hadn't been enough. He realized that without the Boots of the Wind God, he would have been forced to take those attacks head-on. Logan calmly told Franz that he wasn't using any secret arts and asked him to wait a moment, promising to show him a real secret technique. Franz, arrogant to the end, agreed without hesitation. That arrogance made things easier. Logan focused entirely on his sword, pouring his aura into it. He knew what was at stake. If he lost, he wouldn't just lose Lux and the boots. Franz would make sure he never held a sword again. Franz struck first, lunging forward, aiming straight for Logan's heart. The moment his blade descended, everything exploded. Franz had completely misjudged the depth of Logan's power. Logan unleashed the third form of the Divine Sword secrets, conjuring a blade of pure aura that tore through the battlefield. The shockwave was so violent that the knights accompanying him began frantically searching for his location. Franz coughed up blood. He had managed to dodge the worst of it, but even so, he muttered bitterly that it might have been better to die alongside Logan than to return defeated. Logan mounted his horse and rode off, his thoughts heavy. He remembered the moment Franz had attacked while he was charging the third style, and the coin-sized hole that had been torn through his chest. All the bravado, the confidence, the talk it had, all benefits odd. Still, one truth was undeniable. With his current skills and the treasures he possessed, he could now defeat an advanced knight. Suddenly, his vision blurred. Logan slipped from the saddle and fell to the ground as the horse continued forward without him. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to Amazing Apai. Subscribing makes sure you do not miss the next video, and it gives me motivation to keep improving the quality of every upload. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one.